Welcome. Thank you for coming out tonight where we are going to talk about the Portland CSO Basin. This is our conceptual design meeting. I appreciate your time this evening. And we are taping this for Metro TV. So you've been given note cards when you've come in. I'm sure during the course of the presentation you may think of a question or want to have a question, but because we're taping this, if you could jot that question down on your note card, or if you don't have a note card, raise your hand, we'll get one to you. That way, at the end of the presentation, we'll collect those cards and I'll answer those questions at that time. That way we won't be stopping during the course of the presentation for TV. I'd like to acknowledge some special guests here this evening. You all are special guests, but with Louisville, the Metro Councilwoman Sherry Bryant Hamilton is here. We appreciate her coming out and her support. With Louisville Forward, we have Mr. Jim Mims. He's here with us. And with Metroparks, Mr. Marty Storch is here. So welcome to everyone here this evening. So what we're going to talk about tonight is, here's our agenda, why we're here, what is MSD's public outreach process, the project phases of this particular project, MSD and citizens' roles, getting to know you. We'll have some demographics. And these questions that we're asking tonight, they will be posted online. So if you have friends and neighbors that have not been here or couldn't come out tonight, this presentation will be online for a few weeks. You're welcome to go online, have your friends go online, and they can participate in this as well. Introduction to this particular project, the drainage area, site selection process, location, frequently asked questions about basins, park usage, next steps, and feedback. First off, let's talk about why we are here. You know, you're here for a meeting. It's called Portland CSO Basin. Well, what is a CSO? If you look at this map, all those dots represent overflows in the combined or the separate sewer system. And all that means is on dry weather days, sewage stays in the pipe system as it's supposed to and gets to one of the treatment plants in our metro area. However, when it rains, and if you'll recall from a conceptual meeting, if you were out, or what we say at all of our conceptual meetings, with as little as 1/10 of an inch of rain, we can have overflows in the system. So the rain gets into the sewer system, and the sewage is not totally contained within the pipe system. It can't handle the rain and the sewage flow. So these show that these overflows are throughout the county, and so that's why we have these. We are mitigating this problem. We're addressing this problem. And this, you've heard of the consent decree. It's an $850 million cost to the community, so we need to spend these dollars wisely, efficiently, and that's what we're going to explain tonight about this particular basin. The basin, all you need to really take away from this slide is that you can see all of the dots represent some CSOs in the combined sewer area. That just means areas basically inside of Watterson where the sewer carries sewage during dry weather and they can carry storm water and sewage during wet weather. So all those dots represent areas where that water leaves the system, and with as little as 1/10 of an inch of rain, water can leave the system and not make it to the plant, but it leaves the system and gets to a body of water, Beargrass Creek, the Ohio River. The large squares on this map represent areas where there are basins, so we can see that it's not just in the Portland area, it's in West Louisville, it's downtown, central to downtown, along Grinstead Avenue, and downtown around Logan and Breckenridge. So they're located, these basins are located close to where the combined sewer overflows occur. Talk for a second about MSD's outreach program, in that we have a 4-stage public outreach program, public meeting process, an orientation meeting where we first talk about the consent decree, why are we doing these projects, what is the impetus for that. We talk about the background of when did the consent decree, when did we enter into that, what problems are we trying to solve, what can we do as individuals. We talked about what maybe not to do laundry when it's raining, what not to put down your sewer system when it's raining. And in the citizens' role, in MSD's role, what we're doing, we're building basins, we have some green infrastructure projects. So we've already had that meeting for this particular project. That was held on February 9th of last year. We discussed the combined sewer overflows, what causes them. I've just given a brief overview of that, what we can do as individuals, what MSD is doing, and that presentation is available on our Project Win website. So if you were unable to attend that meeting, you can go back online and you can view that. So we're back to talk now about the conceptual design. So you can see we've got a 4-phase. We're at the conceptual design meeting tonight. That's why we're here tonight, to present a little bit about how did we select the site, where is the site, and then take some ideas and some concepts from you all and from people online to vote as to what might be a leave behind when we leave this basin. We'll come back later this summer for what's called advanced design. We'll take the ideas that we gathered online that people voted on and from ideas tonight, and we'll come back and we'll present some design options, and you'll have an opportunity at that time, either at the meeting or subsequently online, to vote on those options as well. We'll take those ideas and preferences and we'll come back with our final design, and right before construction, we'll have a pardon our dust or a pre-construction meeting. You'll have the opportunity to meet, know who the contractor is, who our inspector is, who do you contact during the duration of construction if you have a question or issue. All right, so we're here tonight to talk about conceptual design. We'll be back in the summer to talk about the advanced design, and then construction should begin in the spring of 2017. All right, so let's get your clickers ready. Before we begin, we'll have a little bit of information. We'll practice using the clickers and start getting some demographic information from you. These are simple to use. No one knows your answers. You didn't sign a name to a particular number on a clicker. We will all see the results here this evening as we vote. Everybody gets an equal voice. It's not just the loudest one or who clicks the clicker the hardest or last. We get an equal voice for all. And then, as I said, this presentation will be made available online for a few weeks, and people who are unable to attend tonight have the opportunity to vote just as you are. All right, so let's start off with a hard question, just to practice using the clickers. Who's going to win the Super Bowl 50? Denver Broncos or Carolina Panthers? You just pick number 1 or number 2 on your clicker, and we'll get those polling results. You can hit number 1 or 2, or you could hit 1 again. It's just going to record your last entry. All right, what's that say? 24 people voting? 14? All right. Everybody got it? All right, let's see what we have here. All right, Carolina Panthers it is then. We'll see. We'll come back and maybe report that at the next meeting. All right, now that we know how to use the clickers, how young are you? Hit number 1 for your corresponding age if you're 0 to 19, or corresponding number for your age range. Again, just demographic information. I'm getting ready to close the polling. Everybody hit that? All right, we have that information. Thank you. Male or female? We gather that information for the respondees. All right, I'm going to close the polling. Now a little more specific information about the area. How long have you lived in the Portland community? Less than 5 years, 5 to 9 years, 10 to 19 years, over 20 years, or I live outside of Portland. All right, I'm going to close the polling. All right, so we have a lot of people who live outside of Portland here this evening. But again, I expect that to change with the online polling as well. Where do you live? Kind of look at these areas and kind of remember this. We're going to ask a few questions about the geographic area here. See if I can describe those areas. If you know the map, then you probably already know, but let me describe the boundaries. Area 1 is bounded by 22nd Street, 30th Street, I-64, and Bank Street. That's the green area. Area 2 is 21st Street, 30th Street, Bank Street, and West Market Street. That's kind of the lighter yellow, light green area. Area 3 is 30th Street, I-264, I-64, and West Market. And Area 4 is 15th, 21st, I-64, and West Market. If you're just close, I think that would be fine. So if you can identify that. All right, so go ahead and use your clickers and identify which area you live in. If you don't live in one of those areas, click number 5. All right, a lot of people live in Area 1, good. Where do you operate a business? Those are the same areas. If you don't operate a business, we'll have an option for that. So you can see some of the major businesses here: Kroger, Portland Salvage Yard, Landon Park, and Neighborhood House, where we're at tonight. All right, where do you operate a business? Which one of those areas, or I don't operate a business? All right, I'm going to close the polling. All right, Area 1 again. Where do you spend your days? And that's whether you work or school or volunteer. Just interested in where you spend your day. Do you spend it in one of these areas? All right, I'm going to close the polling. All right, Area 1. We have a lot of people in Area 5, but we have a lot of visitors with us for associated with the MSD, so I'm going to assume most people live in Area 1 then. So an introduction to this particular combined sewer overflow basin project. As you can see from this slide, what I want to convey is that there are other basins in other areas. We get questions all the time, why are you in my neighborhood? Well, that's where they need to be where the CSOs occur. You can see other big squares there. Those are around other combined sewer overflows as well. So there are basins being built throughout the metro area. And what is a combined sewer overflow basin? It's a basin that provides temporary storage for wet weather overflows that would otherwise flow directly to creeks, streams, or rivers. And it's released back into the collection system for treatment when system capacity is available. So I think we need to think about this as it's an empty basin when it's not raining. When it rains, it will fill up with storm water and some sewage diluted. So it's not raw sewage in this basin. Once the sewer system has the capacity to take that water back into it, we'll pump that out. And typically we are required to pump that out within 24 hours. So if we are in a dry period for a long time, there's just absolutely nothing in this basin. It's not meant to be operated 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. It's a wet weather structure. And you can see on this schematic here, it's below ground. Above ground, if you were just looking at it, it's mostly grass or whatever we leave on top, but it would be buried and underground. This particular basin, talking about that this evening while we're in this area, there's a drainage area of over 850 acres. There are 61 overflows per typical year. That means in an average, our design year, which happens to be 2001, on that particular year, there would have been 61 overflows. That would have equated to 167 million gallons of water and sewage that would have escaped the pipe system. With this basin, it has about 6.7 million gallons of capacity. It's underground and covered. And those overflows will be reduced on that typical year for the same rain events per year, that design year, down from 61 to 8 overflows per year. That's an 86% reduction in overflow occurrences. Someone might say, why couldn't you take that to 0? Well, if you know the weather patterns, we would design for a certain year, and first thing you know, the next rain event would be larger than we've ever had. So we couldn't design it to the nth capacity. We design it to a typical design year. This represents that 800 plus acres for the runoff, the 850 acres for the drainage area that would flow to the CSO 19. So at this point, our design consultant for this basin is Heritage Engineering, and Bob Woosley, who happens to be a Portland boy, is going to come up and talk about this. Bob, if you come up. Bob's going to talk about the site selection process.
Yeah. Thanks, Greg. As Greg mentioned, we did look at 12 sites. I think many of you are probably familiar with all 12 of these sites, and we'll go into those and explain why all of those were eliminated except one. The general requirements are that it had to be hydraulically connected to that area that Greg showed you. So if you go back, it has to be within this red box area, this red zone, to collect the flow, because it all flows by gravity through the sewer system. It has to be able to get in there. And it has to be a large enough area that it can accommodate an underground basin. And when you're talking about storing almost 7 million gallons of liquid underground, you're talking about a pretty significantly sized structure. So in general, it's about a 150 foot box, 150 foot by 200 foot box that's about 30 foot in depth under the ground. That could be a rectangular basin, it could be circular, whatever configuration, but that just gives you a general scale of what you're looking at that's going to be under the ground. We did look at 12 potential sites. They varied, and I'm going to just point on the map here and talk, so hopefully this will work. 12 sites, and some of them they're all over the place within the neighborhood, but you've got Portland Wharf Park. That was the original location that was identified in all the early literature in MSD's consent order. That was the initial site that was considered. You had locations within the neighborhood on 34th Street, 35th Street, right next to Good Shepherd Church on a vacant parcel. You had an area in front of the CVS and Portland Presbyterian, an area at the Portland Rec Center, an area that's at the Portland Salvage Yard, a vacant parcel, another vacant parcel behind Donahue's, and then Landon Park. And then a couple others sprinkled in here that we tried to get creative and said, well, what about inside of the right-of-way of I-64 and 264? Could you fit it in there? And that got pushed back quickly by the State Transportation and Federal Transportation Cabinet that would not be allowed. But we wanted to look at all avenues because the criteria we looked at for selecting these sites dealt with private property acquisition. We tried to not acquire private property if we had other avenues around that. Some of those sites, as you recall, as you know, if you go back and look at them, some of those would have required private property acquisition, which we did not want to get into if it was feasible to get around it. Another thing that we looked at in this area are the historical and archaeological impacts. They're pretty significant when you start getting within the neighborhood. You could be taking down some historical structures and so forth, and get into some other archaeological concerns when you're in Portland Wharf Park, because you have the old city streets are still buried there, and there are some things of archaeological significance. So we worked with a lot of agencies to try to figure out how we could avoid those impacts. You have ecological and environmental impacts. One of the sites was the Portland Salvage Yard that was considered. Of course, that you've got a lot of concerns there with that being a brownfield and some other concerns. Traffic disruptions, what's it going to do to the neighborhood? What's that mean when you go in and you close an area down? Because this construction is going to take a significant amount of time to complete. And then any permitting constraints that we would have. So all those items went into looking at the 12 sites initially. We looked at the 12, we ranked them, we did all types of evaluations, we met with different agencies, we met with different permitting folks, and we narrowed it down to 4. So we got the 12 down to 4 sites. The 4 that we came down to were our original Portland Wharf site, and pay no attention to the size of the boxes, it was just a representation. But the Portland Wharf site, the vacant tract next to Good Shepherd Church, a vacant tract across from the salvage yard, and then Landon Park. We looked at these 4 sites for the same reasons, went back through them and figured out, okay, what are the constraints that we're dealing with on each of these? For example, on sites 1 and 5, both of those are located in vacant area, but they're both located on the river side of the flood wall. So one of the constraints we had to deal with was what happens when the river gets up and you have flooding and you have to get to this facility or you have to use this facility. That was a major concern. Another concern was that in Area 1, the Portland Wharf site, was the archaeological significance of that area, and we were trying to not disrupt that significance or diminish it in any way. Site 4 had concerns in that, yes, it was on a vacant tract next to Good Shepherd Church, but we were going to have a major disruption to the neighborhood. We would have to close those streets for some period of time, build it out into the street, and at the end of the day, you've disrupted the use of that property in the future in terms of putting buildings on top of it. You could still use it for green space, but if the church wanted to expand or do some other things, it would have hurt their ability to do that. And then the final site was Site 8, which was Landon Park, and it too has some concerns and some challenges. First of all, you have to keep the park open at all times, or our intention was to keep the park open at all times during construction. Keep access to McAlpin Lock and Dam and LG&E open at all times during construction, because if you know, there is an underpass there at 27th Street, but they can't use that for their truck traffic. It's too low of an overhead. They have to go through the at-grade crossing. So they has to maintain access at all times to that, and that's the location of an old city dump. So what's underground and what are you going to get into? So those things all weighed into it. So we went through that. We did a detailed site selection analysis of those 4, looking at many of the things that I just talked about. Kind of jumped ahead of myself here. We looked at the permitting constraints, private property acquisition, and so on. And everything pointed to, at the end of this, we took the 4 sites to get them down to the 1, which is Landon Park. Landon Park creates its own set of challenges, as I mentioned, and as many as you know. But the location of the basin is going to go where the storage lot is today. So all of you are familiar with that park, I'm sure. And as you come in off Northwestern, You enter the park, and as soon as you come in, you have to split to the left to go to McAlpin or LG&E, the hydroelectric plant, or continue on into the park. We're putting it directly on the footprint of the storage area. So it fits, it's the perfect size, it fits perfectly underground. As Greg mentioned, when we finish this, it'll be under the ground. I mean, you will not see it. What we will have on top of the surface will be a small control building, because we have to put our controls and other materials inside of that, because while the flow gets into the basin by gravity, you have to pump it back out to get it into the system. So you will have that component in there. But beyond that, you will not see it. And we feel that it's a dynamite location in terms of all the constraints that you're faced with. It causes the least disruption to the community, to the neighborhood, and we can keep the park open and access to the facilities there at all times during construction. We have done some testing. We've gone out with our geotechnical consultant, and we've looked at the site. We've done the necessary testing underground to determine what does that mean in terms of the limits of the landfill. And we found that where we're putting it is just outside of most of those limits, and there's really no concerns of that. It doesn't impact flood protection in the location that it's at. We're working with the Corps of Engineers to ensure that, so we're not jeopardizing flood protection. And getting our permits needed through the state transportation cabinet is also acceptable and allowable with this location. So it met all the criteria. We checked all the boxes we needed to check, and feel confident that moving forward, this is by far and away the best location for the area, and will certainly cause the least disruption, because you got to realize with this type of facility, you're going to have lots of construction traffic, lots of vehicles coming in and out. This is the most direct access to the interstate system, so these trucks can get in and out without having to travel a great distance through the neighborhood. So meets a lot of criteria. The park itself, as you guys know, and you can see this, it is separated from the residential area by the interstate, so we've got a nice buffer there. We did not have to get into the acquisition of private properties. We're working with Metro government now to get the easements we need. Didn't have any significant utility relocation required. We have one of our own sewer lines underground there that we have to move. Traffic disruption is minimized, and we are on the land side, or the dry side, of the flood protection system, which is also key. A couple pictures of the site today, just to some of you who may not have been out there in a while. That's looking directly at it as you come into the park, and you can see the storage lot there. I think we took that late spring, early going into the summer, obviously with all the foliage on the trees. More of a close-up view, you can just see some of the storage that's there. I think most of you know the history behind that, and with the McAlpin construction and how that happened. Another photo there looking at it from a different direction. And then I'll give this back to Greg and talk about examples of restoration. Thanks.
All right. Thank you, Bob. As I said, this is our conceptual design meeting, public input. So before we get into polling the audience on some preferences or some ideas that we might go back and apply to this design and come back later this summer and present those and have a chance to take a look at those options. Here's some examples of basin restoration. This one, obviously with the maple leaves, I believe is in Canada. It's got some playing fields on top of it. And I think what we want to take away from this is that it is possible to have green grass on top of this. Of course, we are in a park, so that might be something to leave behind, is some grass. This is another one that, again, I believe this is in, it's either the northern United States or again in Canada. There's a basin. You can see the building in the back. That would be the control building. You can see people walking around, and from what we've understood, a lot of people who use this area don't even know that there's a basin there. I think it's also kind of by de facto kind of represents that a lot of people question about odor and that type of thing. These are not, these are not storing raw sewage. They're storing water, diluted storage during a rain event for a short period of time. So frequently asked questions will create potential for backups. No, the high water elevation in the basement will be below, or in the basin will be below basement elevations. It will not eliminate the potential of backups, but it certainly will not be causing those. What happens when the basin is full? The system will function as it does today with overflows being discharged to the Ohio River. So what we've said earlier is that we will contain that flow, and after the rain events, send that millions of gallons that normally would have been released to the Ohio River will go to treatment. But if the basin's full, it'll just function, it'll overflow just as it always did. So not any worse condition. Will this project reduce localized flooding? It'll increase the capacity of the combined sewer system during wet weather events, and to the extent that will mitigate some localized flooding, it will do that, but it's not designed as a local flood containment structure. Will the basin be visible? This will be underground. There will be a control building and a screen generator, and there may be some access points. We have to have access to maintain the basin. Always people ask about odor. As I've said, it's highly diluted flow, mostly storm water. It is underground and covered. It's equipped with flushing equipment, so after the rain event, when we pump that water out, then we will clean the floor of that basin. And that's all done automated. We don't have to have people out there doing this. Typically, odor control is not necessary with these types of facilities. We are proactive, however. We will perform odor control monitoring and testing, and it's designed to accommodate a future odor control system if needed. So now we want to talk a little bit about park usage. So get your clickers back out and we'll get some input on that. Again, as we've cited this in this park, how often do you use the park? And this is information obviously that Parks is interested in as well. We'll be sharing that with Metroparks. So if you have your clickers, how often do you use this Landon Park? All right, thank you. Seasonally. How do you use the park? You can pick up to 3. You can punch 5 different numbers, but it's going to record the last 3 is what we'll be polling. So you can pick up to 3 here. Walking or running, basketball, baseball, softball, tennis, playground, picnic, access to Riverwalk and Levee Trail, or other. Pick up to 3. You can pick 1, 2, or 3. All right, I'm going to close the polling. All right, walking and running and access to the Riverwalk. Again, these will be online for those who could not make it this evening. They could also participate in this polling. How do you get to Landon Park? Do I walk, do I bicycle, take a car, bus, or other? What mode of transportation do you use to access the park? All right, I'm going to close the polling. All right, car. How important is it to leave the park open during construction? Not at all, slightly, moderately, very, or extremely. All right, everybody voted? All right, pretty important. Again, I'm an overview. Currently where the storage for bleachers is now, kind of a gravel paved area, that would be the location of the basin. And over on the left would be some of the access. What improvements would you like to see on this portion of the park? Back to here, where we're not talking about the whole park, but where the basin would be located and the entrance to the park. What improvements would you like to see in that particular portion? A drinking water station, a bicycle comfort station, a picnic area, restroom, athletic field, green space, and we could add up to 3 more. If somebody has some ideas from the audience, we could add those and we could put those in before we vote. Anybody want to venture another idea for an improvement?
Are there any public pools around that area?
Marty, is there any public pools there?
What's that?
Any public pools in the area?
There's no, are you talking about like a water feature or like a spray ground or a swimming pool?
I'm talking about a swimming pool, since it's right next to the water, and we have aquatic deaths every year because we can't swim.
We don't have a swimming pool in there, no.
Okay, is that one we want to add here? Is that your suggestion? Okay. Anything else? Anybody else have any ideas? All right, let's poll on that. Looks like most of us have voted. If you haven't, go ahead and vote for up to 3 here. All right, looks like a bicycle comfort station, restroom, green or open space, drinking water station. And again, we're going to take the answers to all of these and come back summer and talk about things that we can incorporate. We will work with Metroparks on that. We will present some other ideas to put a more flesh on this and be able to have some more polling opportunities at that time for your input and consideration. So we're in what's called the advanced project design, or we will be in the advanced project design. We'll take these suggestions this evening as we enter into this conceptual design. We'll be back in the summer to have an advanced design public input meeting. That's when we'll take some of these ideas. We'll see what we can accommodate. We'll come back and tell you what we couldn't accommodate. It might have been a suggestion, and we'll give reasons for that. We will also then have our Pardon Our Dust meeting, which will be in the spring of 2017, which will be the last public meeting we have before construction begins. Construction will start in the spring of next year. Construction completion by spring of 2019. Our consent decree deadline is December 31 of 2019. So for more information and to give input on this project, come back in the summer when we have our advanced design meeting, and we'll have another opportunity to look at this project in a little more detail. So one more time on your clickers, how did you hear about this meeting? And you could vote for up to 3 here. So did you receive a postcard? Was it through the paper, council persons, newsletter, neighborhood association, word of mouth, flyer, Project Win website, MSD email, and Louisville MSD Twitter account, or other? Up to 3. All right, we'll close the polling. And we use this information as we try to get as many people out to these meetings as we can. We can use this information and use what people like how they like to receive this information and improve on that. How would you like to learn about MSD's projects? Again, the same list or bill inserts, MSD Streamlined newsletter. A little bit different question. How would you like to hear if it's different from how you heard about this one? All right, we've got 7 responses. Need a few more. All right, I'm going to close the polling. You'd like to learn about them through public meetings and MSD email, along with the neighborhood association and bill inserts. How satisfied are you with this feedback method? Very unsatisfied, unsatisfied, somewhat unsatisfied? The whole realm here as to how MSD is trying to get input on these projects and improve our public outreach. All right, I'm going to close the polling. All right, thank you for that. So for general information or emergencies regarding MSD system, at any time, call 587-0603. Your call are answered around the clock, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, every day of the year by an MSD staff member. We'd be happy to take information about a problem, a question, and get back with you. Please, as I've said several times during this presentation, thank you for coming out tonight and participating in this. There are a number of people who may have had obligations this evening, people that you know, you live with, go to church with, school with. Tell them about this process and make sure they come back to the meeting that we're going to have this summer. But in the meantime, this will be posted in a few days on our website, and they can participate in this polling just as you did this evening, and we sure would welcome that input. So thank you for coming out tonight, and if you've had your cards, if you have any questions, if you please raise those up, we'll come and collect those and answer those questions. There's a question here, I can't, it's something about the hole at Logan and Breckenridge. Is the hole at Logan and Breckenridge a CSO? It is a CSO basin, so it'll be a basin functioning as this basin does during storm water events. That basin will fill up and prevent sewage that normally would get into the improved Beargrass Channel. There's 13 CSOs that normally in a rain event would go into Beargrass Channel there, will be contained by that particular structure, and then after the storm event, then it'll be pumped from there to the Morris Foreman treatment facility for treatment. And will this basin require pumps to move water to the CSO? No, what we're doing is it will require pumps to take the water from the basin after it's full and put it back into the system to go to Morris Foreman for treatment. The CSO is located hydraulically connected to this basin, but we're not pumping to the CSO. The CSO just means combined sewer overflow. That's where the water leaves the pipe system. So what we're doing is we're trying to prevent water from leaving that location. We're gathering it up, storing it until the storm event is passed, and then water that normally would have gone out to the high river would then go to Morris Foreman for treatment.
Greg, are any of those CSOs, are they linked up, or are they all individually piped to North Point?
As it relates to the basins, the CSOs will be linked by pipe to the basin. Then from the basin, it would be pumped out to the force main to get to a gravity system, or some combination of force main and gravity to get to Morris Foreman. Is construction at any of the sites likely to cause structural or cosmetic damage to surrounding structures? I'm assuming we're talking about any of the other basins that we're constructing. That's all kind of a case-by-case basis. It has to do with, it's not intended to do that, but a lot of times if we're blasting, if the rock is maybe 5 feet under the ground and it's solid rock and the basin is 40 or 50 feet deep, there might be a month or 2 or 3 of blasting. Certainly we have provisions for how we handle those conditions, and during construction, things do happen from time to time. We try to mitigate that. We try to alleviate claims. We try to mitigate those things. In this particular area, on this site, that is a silty, sandy soil. I don't believe we'll be doing rock blasting on this particular site. But again, those types of questions are a case-by-case basis depending on the geological structure of the ground at those locations.
So will there be any time, you saw that the folks wanted overwhelmingly the park not to be closed. I mean, will there be any time that the park will have to be closed?
Again, we take these considerations, and as I stand here today, I don't see why we could not keep the park open at all times while we're building this basin. If we come back in our advanced design meeting and we have any kind of different information, we'd share that at the time, but from my 38 years of experience, I don't know why we would. Will MSD be able to help fund other potential Landon Park renovations? Will the park remain open? Park will remain open, as I said. Will MSD be able to fund other potential Landon Park renovations? You have to understand that this $850 million consent decree is paid for not by federal government monies, not by somebody else paying for it. It's us as the users of this system who pay for that. The ratepayers pay for this. So I'm reminded that if we don't make our deadline under the consent decree, there are penalties. Nobody comes in and pays that penalties but the ratepayers as well. We're blessed in this area that we have some of the lowest rates for sewage in this region. We'd like to keep it that way. So we have to be careful about these funds, about how we expend funds. So when we are purchasing land or easement in this case, we have to be cognizant that that we're watching out for all of us as the ratepayers. So it's not MSD's business to build playgrounds or to build facilities. Our business is the public health and welfare of this community and of the waterways in this community. So we have to be good stewards of those funds. So I don't think that it's going to be possible to say that we're spending an extra fill in the blank X dollars to do something other than what MSD's mission is. We do want to pay fair market value for the land and the use of that land, but above and beyond that wouldn't be fair to other areas that we didn't do the same thing for. Will there be any odor controls built into the basin? As I've said in the presentation, we designed for that. Don't anticipate that, but again, being good stewards, we want to design for that capability, but we don't want to put in $500,000 worth of odor control equipment and never turn it on. And there's been communities across the country that have done that. We want to be proactive and design for that, be ready for that in case it's needed, but we have no evidence that it's going to be needed. But again, be prudent to design for that ahead of time. If not, are there plans to set aside money for it? As I said, we are designing for that. What's the longest anticipated period water will be standing in the basin? You know, that depends on, do storms come every 2 days? Do they come once a week? If the basin's full, or we have a storm and it gets half full, and we have 2 days where it doesn't rain, and then we have a big rain. The longest period that it should be standing would be 24 hours after a rain event. We should have capacity back in the system at that time, approximately. Those are all going to be depending upon the conditions. If you're very familiar with the weather patterns in Louisville, we might get one area of the county that gets 1.5 inches of rain and another area gets half an inch of rain. And so it all depends on where it is in the system, but it's not anticipated, it's not planned for these to be long-term storage facilities. It's very temporary storage. And again, during dry periods, it's an empty basin. It's there having capacity for when it does rain. I'm pausing here. There's a plethora of questions, so let me digest all these. How much earth are we removing and to where? Again, it's a 6.7 million gallon approximately basin. There's a calculation. It depends on whether this is round or square. It's a certain volume, and of course, it's going to be several thousand yards of dirt as to where that is removed. Again, I go back as an engineer to the economics of this. We let the free market with the contractors determine where that is. We get the best value when the bidders can determine where it goes. If we designate a certain area, that takes the free market out of it, and we could be paying a premium. So at this point, we are anticipating that it be a free market, let the contractor decide where to put that, and we think we will get the best benefit of that for the ratepayers. Possible artifacts at this site, we are doing historical studies at this site, so we'll be looking for that type of thing, and anything that we do find, of course, will be mitigated, but I think we've done enough research that we don't think we're going to have that. What would be the concerns if in the future, is reused? I don't know if we're talking about the dirt there or the site. Can somebody clarify that question?
The site.
That site, I think this is built as a permanent structure, so I don't think we'd be using the below ground for anything different than what we're using now. If 100 years from now we did not need that facility, the engineers at that time would determine, would we fill it in, would we do something, but I don't think it's anything that would be impossible to solve or improbable to solve. But
Who maintains that top of that after you get it in the ground?
well, this is an easement, and it's in Metroparks, so we'll be working that out with Metro. They're mowing the park around there, and I guess we'll have to work that out. If it's grass, if it's something else, it just depends on who's using that. But we'll work that out. It'll be maintained.
That's a dig at me,
Oh,
just so you know.
okay, all right, good. As long as it wasn't at me, Marty, thank you.
No, he shot that at me.
Could the depth go into the fossil bed or water table? Well, I anticipate along the river, the water table is going to be pretty high when in sandy, silty soil. So I anticipate there will be dewatering for construction, but not after the structure is built. The water table will be allowed to return to its normal condition. We'll be going to the fossil bed. Again, I don't think the depth is going to be to where we're excavating into rock. How is the system monitored? We'll have flow level sensors, so we'll know when it's full, when to shut gates off and not put any more water in it, so it won't just keep flowing into there. And then once there's capacity in the receiving system, that's when the pumps will turn on and we'll dewater the basin and clean the bottom of it. Possible dirt being blown into the park or homes. Again, air pollution control, we have ordinances on that. We monitor the contractors. Yeah, if it's dry, they need to be using water trucks, and we need to mitigate that. That's part of construction, but always on a dirty, sandy site, that's a possibility, and we just need to monitor that and do our best to keep that mitigated. Is it a possible site for the professional soccer team? I think it's a great idea, but I wouldn't be the one to answer that question. I'd think if it's big enough, who knows what could be used there. Endless possibilities. All right, any other questions? Oh, we do have more. They keep coming. How is the basin cleaned after it is set empty for a while? Well, immediately after we pump the water out, we'll have a flushing system that would take potable water, and we would wash. Understand that it's diluted sewage that's in there, but if it's held for 24 hours, there will be some settling on the bottom. So once it's pumped out, we'll be cleaning the bottom of the floor, just flushing it with clean water, and we'll pump that back into the system as well. So after the event and after we've pumped it out, we will clean the bottom of it with clean water, and then it'll just sit there. There's nothing to get in there that'll get dirty in the meantime until the next rain event. An athletic field was one of the possible leave-behinds, as well as a restroom or bicycle station. Well, MSD pay to construct those depending on which one is selected. You know, this is a little bit different in that this is in a metro park. It's metro-owned property, so we won't be buying this in fee simple. We'll be using this as an easement situation. Depending on what is left there, that'll all be part of the agreement on, and as far as paying in kind, I think that's all part of what is the cost to use that easement. That's all part of the determination of that. It'll be worked into that agreement. It's about the best I can say right now.
I just want to say that we've obviously been discussing with MSD. As you saw, Metroparks had a couple different facilities that were potentials. One of the things that we looked at when we were looking at Landon was there somewhere else in that area that it could go, and we were trying to squeeze it out of what was the park. And when we got to discussing it, it wouldn't really fit, right? Can I say that? I already did, so hopefully I could say that. And we looked at what I call my storage eyesore, Jerry. So the eyesore area will be addressed, okay? And you're right, that is one of the last things that people see and one of the first things that people see. And when everyone knows how that got there, when they were working on the locks, we rented space to them so they could do their work. It was a parking lot. They were willing to put it back, and we said, well, you know what, this would be a great area for us to store bleachers, especially as we get the parade and as we do things with other groups. And then we got where we were storing some locks that we got from the dam itself. It became a storage area, and it just sat there, and no one ever really said anything other than the fact it was just there. And when we were looking at this and said, well, it would be nice to finally put that back to the way it was prior to the McAlpin Lock project. So I promise, Jerry, I'll do my best to keep it mowed. I got your dig. But it is an eyesore.
Yeah, okay, you want to talk directly? Are y'all going to charge them rent for this property they're sitting on?
That's what we're negotiating as far as the easement. That is something that is in negotiation. We just started once the spot was filled. Just like we got before. We did get rent from McAlpin. It'll be, I don't know what it will be. And I think $5 a year? I don't know. I don't know what it will end up being, but we will get something. And again, there were some things that were up there that people voted on that they would like to see come back from the area. The good news is it is going to be returned to green space. I am going to find a new place to store bleachers, garbage cans, and rocks. So I can definitely say that.
Your neighborhood, right?
My neighborhood. Yes, sir. Excuse me?
It's not gonna go into Smoketown as it is, our MSD Basin is gonna be covered with a single-story, 2-block-long brick prison structure.
No, the pump house is a smaller, it's like a garage size, is that right? A single, there's not gonna be something there that's gonna be an eyesore. There will be, and I don't wanna talk from MSD side, but what I understand, it's more like a one-car garage style building. There can be some things, and that's some of the stuff we had talked about, that could potentially be a leave behind that makes the park better, makes the use for the park better. But I don't think you're going to see some 2-story monstrosity that really is going to detract from the park itself. Matter of fact, it should be better.
The one they're building in Smoketown?
Like the one they're building in Smoketown?
Yes.
I don't know what's exact. I haven't been involved with the smoke.
Logan Street.
Oh, Logan Street. This is below. You want to talk about that? This is not a Logan Street type.
No,
This is a below ground basin.
right. As we talk, and as Kate knows, this is a below-ground structure in a park, and we're here to talk about the CSO basin at Landon Park, Portland Basin tonight. Yes, ma'am.
Did I understand spring of 17 till 19?
Right, about a 2-year construction period. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
But the park is staying open. And come back here in the summer and we'll have some more details based on these ideas. Thank you all so much. Appreciate it.